From July 26th to August 11th, the 2024 Paris Olympics showcased the world's greatest athletes, but not all for the reasons they'd like.
Any attempts of reform at WADA have fallen short, and there are still deeply rooted systemic problems that prove to be detrimental to the integrity of international sports and athletes' rights to fair competition, time and time again.
On July 30th, 2 Chinese swimmers tested positive for a banned anabolic steroid in 2022, but were still allowed to continue competing. How? Because Chinese anti-doping regulators claimed the positive test came from contaminated food they ate, so they weren't suspended. But there's much more to the situation than just the failed drug tests. Because following the 2024 World Championships of Swimming, it was revealed that 23 Chinese swimmers from the Tokyo Games tested positive for TMZ before the Olympics at training camp, and 3 of those tested positive for clenbuterol years before that. In fact, 11 out of those 23 swimmers participated in the 2024 Paris Games. Yes, these athletes are continuing to compete in the Olympic Games, but this isn't the first time this has happened. In fact, illegal substances have been destroying the Olympics for over 50 years, and it's time you learn the truth. I'm Josh Silverstein, and this is Clutch Call. Doping has a history just as long as the Olympics, literally. The Olympic Games didn't start drug testing until 1968, and the first positive test? You guessed it, 1968. And every single Summer Olympic Games since they started testing has had at least one positive test, except 1980. And it has continued. As of 2024, China has had 4 total medals stripped due to doping. The most is Russia with 51, and the United States stands at 8. But what is the testing process really like? It starts with every country self-policing its own athletes and testing procedures. However, this immediately raises a red flag for countries where the government censors the news or rules with an iron fist. But as a safeguard against this, the Olympics also instituted its own specific anti-doping rules to oversee all the countries. And these are known as the World Anti-Doping Agency Code, better known as WADA. And there's a multi-step anti-doping process here. In 2019, the International Olympic Committee gave the International Testing Agency the anti-doping testing authority during the Olympics. And there's a ton of people doing the testing, with over 1,000 employees helping to make it as accurate as possible. 800 are chaperones designed to help athletes through the process and present results. Then, 360 people collect the testing samples that, in 2024, were sent to the lone certified lab in France, the Laboratoire Antidopage Français. But over the years, there have been tons of flaws. The lack of accountability has spread. In June 2024, the China doping test was called inaccurate and politically charged. China's anti-doping agency called it fake news. Everyone wants stricter penalties, and the lack of immediate suspensions is hurting the validity of WADA as a whole. Committee chairs have stated the World Anti-Doping Agency, the governing body responsible for enforcing fair standards, has a questionable track record, while WADA has called these callouts misleading and potentially defamatory. During the 2024 Paris Games, only 3 athletes out of 10,714 were initially disqualified for positive tests. Then, during the end of the 2024 Games, Congolese sprinter Dominique Lascani Malamba was provisionally banned for testing positive for an anabolic steroid, making 4 positive tests in Paris. But this is tame compared to past Olympic Games. There's also been flaws in the testing itself. There have been years where drug testing seemingly barely happened at all. 2016 showed arguably one of the worst examples, especially following the nearly 50 positive doping tests from Russia in the 2012 London Games. What were the numbers in 2016? Half of the drug tests had to be aborted because athletes couldn't be found. Many tests didn't follow through because half of the chaperones just didn't show up. 498 fewer tests were completed than planned, and just 28% of everyone competing was tested. And it was found years after the actual Olympic Games that 45 additional athletes were found to have tested positive for banned substances in 2016 following the 2008 Beijing Games and 2012 London Olympic Games. Athletes have also had false tests in years past. The process is extremely flawed year to year, and unfortunately, it isn't just one country. The United States has been under scrutiny as well, using athletes as undercover agents. For the US, anyone who is participating in an event or competition sanctioned by the United States Olympic Committee is required to be tested. Athletes are tested both in and out of competition. And recent athletes have had disqualification situations, like in July 2021, when Sha'Carri Richardson tested positive for THC, an Olympic banned substance. But many have argued that the bans and suspensions don't seem to do the cheating justice. like after the 2012 London Games scandal, where Russia received no blanket ban for the very next Olympics, Rio 2016. However, only 271 athletes were allowed to compete compared to 436 in 2012. But this doping problem, regardless of country, continues to get swept under the rug. And it's affecting the results of the Olympics. For example, in the 2024 Olympic Games, China had 31 swimmers, and 11 of them were connected to the last Tokyo Games doping scandal. This scandal has been all over the sports news, but it is seemingly barely talked about compared to the Games itself. Is there something more happening behind the scenes? Possibly. It was found that China committed $2 million in funding to WADA in 2018 and 2019, leading to suspicion of WADA's ultimate motivation. Did these large donations lead to more lenient rulings for doping athletes? A little money under the table certainly doesn't hurt. And since 2023, China has been bringing in more international swimming medals than ever before. 16 total medals in the 2023 World Championships and 11 in 2024 compared to just 5 in 2022. China finished second behind the United States in the 2024 Paris Olympics with 91 total medals and 40 golds. They also won 12 medals in swimming, including 5 bronzes and 1 silver from Zhang Yufei, who had previously tested positive for banned substances. However, Pan Zhan Li, who won 2 golds, was not one of the 23 to test positive. Whether it's 2024, 2012, or 1968, doping has become a part of the Olympic Games. And the continued flaws in the testing process make athletes question not only their competitors, but also those overseeing the Games as a whole.